Hello everybody. I want to show you a game from Moscow 1957. It's from the 24th Russian Championship or USSR Championship, which took place for a month, January 21st to February 21st of 1957. It's too bad we don't have tournaments that long anymore, right? uh, this game is between a Georgian grandmaster. Um, yes, from the same place is Grandmaster Bador Yobava. But this grandmaster is B.Gurgenidze. For those of you not familiar with him, uh, I would just tell you that he was a very strong player. He won the Georgian chess championship 11 or 12 times, competed in 9 USSR championship finals. Um, he was born in 1933 and passed away in 2008, so he lived a long life. Um, as was common in those days, he received his international master title in 1966. So he was 33 years old, um, and he received the GM title in 1970. So he was 37. So at the time of this game, 1957, he was just a master player. Um, yeah, back then you didn't have players becoming international masters at 12, 13 years old. Um, it was actually thought that players didn't even really reach their peak until their 30s. So, boy, have times changed. Um, just real quick, I want to mention too is that uh, Gurgenidze has several variations named after him, but this might be the most famous in the modern defense. So e4, g6, d4, bishop g7, knight c3, c6, and this is it right here, as opposed to the normal d6. And when white tries to play that Austrian attack, d5, e5, and h5, and this is known as the Gurgenidze variation of the modern defense. With the black pieces is the legendary world champion Mikhail Tal. And in 1957, Tal was, to me, hitting his stride. He was right in his prime, just young, and playing his best chess ever. He actually won this Russian championship after coming in fourth place the previous year. Uh, just to give you an idea of the competition, he came first ahead of Bronstein, Keres, Spassky, um, Korchnoi played Petrosian, Taimanov, so Nesmetnov, all the top Soviet uh, players were young and in their prime at the time. Um, and so he came in first with a score of 14 points um, out of a field of 22 players. So here's a game right here that was one of the most spectacular and memorable of the tournament. Um, Gurgenidze started out with d4, Tal knight of 6, c4, c5. Tal was playing the Benoni at the time. d5, e6, knight c3, e takes d5, c takes d5, d6, knight f3, and g6. This is the modern Benoni. Why is it modern? Because of the move g6. Early Benoni games, players would play bishop e7 and then get their queenside counterplay started, castle, and then perhaps later on, after moves like bishop, rook to e8, bishop f8, then they would fianchetto later on in the game. The modern Benoni um, take some time out to place the bishop on its best diagonal immediately, even at the cost of a tempi. So g6 by Tal, e4 by Gurgenidze, bishop g7, bishop e2, castles, castles, rook to e8, and it's important for black to keep the pressure on the e pawn because this pawn wants to advance and drive black out of the center. What black has in exchange for giving up the central influence is that he has this majority on the queen side. All right, and if he can make it to an ending, he would have this nice 3-2 pawn majority on the queen side that um, he can use to eventually create a passed pawn. This all works beautifully in conjunction with this bishop on g7, um, which points down on this diagonal to this b2 square and this rook on a1. So generally we can say that black's strategy is to play on the queen side, although this depends on what white has in store. Okay, because white can play more aggressive. White can play in in a positional sense. There's different ways that white can choose to try to refute, excuse me, refute black setup. So play continued with knight d2, and I don't know what it's called now, but it used to be called the Knight's Tour variation, and the idea is um, to immediately address black's weakness, which uh, is located on d6. The d6 pawn um, is a thorn many times in black's position, and it becomes very awkward as far as trying to defend that pawn. So the plan here usually moves like knight d2. Um, the knight entrenches itself on c4, and then the bishop, the dark square bishop on c1, often will end up on f4. Okay, so knight a6, and uh, this knight coming to a6 is not designed to go to b4, but the idea is to facilitate the advance of these queen side pawns. And this is basically one of three plans that black usually have. Now, I'm not trying to get into all of the theory, but just to give you a quick overview, there's basically three plans that black will employ. Okay, let's go back to the castling. Right, usually it's, again, rook e8 as Tal played, knight d2, but instead of knight a6, knight bd7 is an option. And basically, black is seeking to gain play on the king side now. Right? Well, remember I was saying his main idea is to push these pawns on the queen side, but in this variation, black is trying to fight more or less on the king side. Okay, he wants to use this outpost at e5. Okay, now the downside of that, because you can see f4 is often available, the downside of that is usually for black to keep control over the e5 square, he has to weaken his king side a little bit with the move g5. Okay, but nevertheless it's playable, and that's one of the plans. Now Tal's continuation with knight d2 and knight a6, this guarantees black queen side play, and this is the plan in this particular variation when the knight comes to a6 is to play knight c7 and then a6 b5. Okay, now what's the cost? Because there's always a cost. The cost is that the knight is a bit passive there on not here on a6 but on c7. Okay, the knight is not it's like what my coach would say, half developed. Like it's off the back rank, but you really don't want the knight here. But that's the concession that black takes on in order to execute his queen side counterplay. Last but not least, instead of rook e8, is just the immediate attempt at queenside expansion with a6, which is almost always meant by a4, and then bishop g4. All right, and this allows black, a smooth development. Right, he gets everything out. The bishop is out, but uh, he can't play as aggressively. The game definitely takes on more of like a positional flavor and positional character, and he can't be as aggressive. So now I gave you just a quick overview of the Benoni. Let's get back to the game. Tal chose this plan to expand on the queen side, as I told you. So knight a6. Gurgenidze played rook e1. There's several options here. f4, the option. And it's definitely imperative for black to stay focused and to make sure there's always pressure on d5 and e4 so that white always has some type of trouble advancing his center here. So for example, play could go bishop d7, and notice with the rook here on e8, it hinders the advance. Rook e1, of course, preparing the advance. Queen c7, and basically black wants to slow down white's central and stop, if he can, his central pawns long enough so that he can get his full counterplay going on the queen side. h3, rook ac8. It's just example of typical play that can take place. Another option is f3. Very solid. And black has to be careful not to be squeezed to death positionally. Another example. Knight c4, and black is desperate as far as looking for counterplay. Another main idea to remember in the Benoni is basically is black. You want to be active as possible, okay, and white is basically trying to just put out the fire and slow down black's activity and play a positional game, because this position statically is better for white. He has more space in the center. His pieces are easily deployed to nice squares. So if he could just limit black's activity, he should go on and have a good game. So black has to play, pick and choose his opportunities. Those are just two options besides the text. Rook e1 was played. Tal went on with his plan. Knight c7, a4 again, trying to inhibit queenside expansion. b6 from Tal. And now Gurgenidze plays the move queen c2, again in the spirit of quenching the activity from black. h3 is a move that has been suggested by many commentators. Basically, keeping pieces off of g4, whether it be the bishop or the knight. White has a good position and can afford to make a move like this. After all, in this position, what exactly is black going to do? He can try a move like bishop a6. Okay, but then after bishop takes, and knight c4, white just has pressure on the position. It's really hard for black to generate any meaningful counterplay there. Instead of h3, bishop b7 can be played, but again, that's not too promising either, and white can continue to just build up. Queen c2 was played, not a bad move, but it gives black opportunities. Tal plays knight g4. Okay, and again, he's looking for counterplay, looking for activity. All right, and here perhaps, if allowed, he would even play Queen H4, right, attacking the king side. Notice the pieces are a little bit absent from there, but that's not um, the only idea there. The idea sometimes in these positions, a knight E5 also utilizing that dark square. Here, Gurgenidze plays the move H3, which seems innocent enough. After all, Tal goes to knight E5, then F4 can be played, knight D7, and knight C4. Again, black is in quasi passive position. However, more prudent was just to capture the knight. Bishop takes G4, bishop takes G4, and again the same idea, knight C4. Also possible is H3 there. Bishop C8, knight F3, but then black has a nice move F5, tearing up white's center because the pawn cannot advance and it's fixed. So therefore, white will lose his influence in the center. That the E pawn is going away. So bishop G5 will be like the last kind of attempt at any kind of initiative, and that's easily met by queen to D7. So instead of H3 there, bishop takes, and knight C4 would be preferable with white having a slight advantage and black kind of lacking in counterplay. These are the type of positions for black that can be very frustrating because you're not lost, but it's hard to generate um, enough activity to keep your opponent busy and distracted from just working on his plans. Like in this type of position, white can only play for two results, either draw or win. He doesn't really have to worry about losing. But back to the game. After knight G4, H3, and Tal um, played a brilliant move here based on the weakness of the dark squares surrounding the king. He played knight takes F2. Wow. King takes F2, Queen H4, check, and King F1. If King G1, then the rook is captured. So King F1, and now Bishop D4 threatening mate on F2. Knight D1 covering F2, and now Queen takes H3. If G takes H3, then Bishop takes H3 is mate. So after Queen takes H3, Bishop takes F3, and then Tal played Queen H2. Another possibility with Bishop A6 check. Knight C4 to block the bishop, and now Queen H1, King E2, Queen H4, Knight DE3, F5, and as you can see, Tal's attack will just keep on burning. All right, there's no way to put the fire out as the pieces continue to swarm around the white king. Now that's hard to calculate, that bishop A6 line. Tal played real practical and played Queen H2. Knight E3. And now he played F5 with this idea to just break open the position. Alright. Knight DC4. A natural move. Of course, this pawn is being attacked, but then at the same time blocks the action of the bishop were it to come to A6. F takes E4. Bishop takes e4, and now bishop a6. Bishop f3 by Gurgenidze. Tal was threatening two things right here. One was rook takes e4, queen takes e4, and just rook e8. And of course, if queen takes e8, knight takes e8. And if queen c2, then just knight to d5. And it's curtains. The other threat was just bishop takes c4 check also. And after knight takes c4, then just rook f8. Bishop f3, and then rook takes f3. Rook cannot be captured because the queen is unprotected here at c2. This is why Gurgenidze moved his bishop back to f3. Tal played rook e5. Even stronger continuation is queen f2 here. And excuse me, queen f4. And if queen f2, bishop takes e3. Bishop takes e3. And just capture this knight here. Bishop takes e4, king g1. Queen just drops back. And white is just down a ton of pawns without any compensation. Tal played rook e5, very natural, with the idea of just doubling the rooks on the e file. Rook a3, trying to desperately get some protection to the knight on e3. Tal doubles. Also possible was rook f8, but rook ae8, bishop d2. Better here was an escape attempt, although he was still lost to king e2. Bishop d2 instead was played, and then Tal just ripped open the position. Knight takes d5, bishop takes d5 check, rook takes d5, and now he tried to escape with king e2. Let me just show you if he tried to grab the rook, knight takes d5, then just queen g1 is checkmate. So he tried to make an escape attempt and get to d1. Bishop takes e3. Rook takes e3. It looks like he's gonna make it, but bishop takes c4 check, and he had to resign. The reason why is because after bishop takes c4, if queen takes c4, then just simply queen takes g2 check, and king d1, and then queen takes d2 mates. Also, instead of bishop takes c4, rook takes e3 wins also. With the same combination, just in different move order, the queen ends up on c4, and then you get this mate. So that was all she wrote for Gurgenidze. These players would go on and play several times. If you look up in the database, the score, Tal beat or defeated Gurgenidze 7 times with 2 losses and 4 draws. However, in the Benoni, Gurgenidze would have his revenge, and this would be years down the road, 1975, where he would actually defeat Tal in another Soviet championship, where Gurgenidze again had the white pieces, and perhaps he learned how to play against the Benoni with the white pieces a little better, and so he was able to get his revenge against Tal at a later time. So that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys later.